Corporal Daniel Hayes stared at the orders glowing on his datapad, blinking as if the letters would change if he looked long enough. The room around him was silent except for the low hum of the air recycler, but inside his head, everything was loud. Assignment: sleep companion to diplomatic envoy Tiverine of the Arathian Collective. Daniel rubbed his eyes and read it again. Surely this was some clerical mistake. He was a trained soldier. Infantry, survival courses, combat drills. He had scars on his arms and a medal hidden away in a drawer, and yet here it was in plain text. His new duty was not guarding gates, not standing watch, not patrolling borders. His new mission was sleeping. At first, the absurdity made him laugh, but the laugh was hollow, because the more he read, the more he realized this was not a joke. The Arathians were not like humans. Their biology was strange, their minds even stranger. For them, sleep was not just rest, it was survival. They were hive-born creatures, raised from birth in chambers filled with warmth, touch, and the sounds of thousands of others breathing. To sleep alone was torment. To sleep too long without companionship was madness. And now one of them, a high diplomat named Tiverine, had come to Earth to negotiate trade and peace. But away from its hive, surrounded by the lonely silence of human cities, Tiverine could no longer rest. Nights of isolation had left the alien trembling, its speech faltering, its health declining. The Council feared that if it failed, the fragile trust between species might collapse with it. That was where Daniel came in. Not as a fighter, not as a negotiator, but as a warm body, a presence, someone who could share a room, lie nearby, and simply be there. Daniel put the datapad down and sat back on the small bunk of his quarters. His chest felt tight. He tried to imagine lying in the dark beside an alien creature. He pictured insect legs clicking on the floor, compound eyes reflecting dim light. He tried to imagine breathing the same air, listening to strange sounds in the silence of the night. A shiver crawled down his spine, but orders were orders. That evening, Daniel walked through the embassy halls, his boots echoing against polished stone. The guards at the door gave him curious looks as if they knew exactly what task he'd been given. Some of them smirked, others shook their heads. Daniel ignored them. He kept his eyes forward, though his ears burned red. A secretary led him to a large chamber dimly lit with pale blue lamps that glowed like quiet stars. The room smelled faintly of iron and rain. In the center stood Tiverine. Daniel had seen recordings of Arathians before, but being in the same room was different. The diplomat was tall, easily 7 feet, its body covered in dark, ridged chitin that shimmered faintly under the lights. Long limbs folded with a grace that was almost elegant, and its eyes, wide and black, reflected the entire room like pools of oil. When it moved, the sound was soft, a faint clicking like glass beads rolling together. For a long moment, neither spoke. Daniel stood stiffly, unsure whether to salute, bow, or simply nod. Tiverine tilted its head, observing him in silence. Finally, the alien spoke. Its voice was low, layered with clicking undertones. But the translator clipped to Daniel's collar smoothed it into words he could understand. "You are the one assigned." "Yes, sir," Daniel said quickly. His voice sounded too loud, too human in the stillness. Tiverine lowered its gaze almost shyly. "Your presence is necessary," Daniel swallowed. He wanted to say something reassuring, but the words caught in his throat. He only nodded. The chamber had 2 cots placed a few feet apart. They looked almost comical, simple human bedding in a room meant for alien royalty. Daniel placed his pack down and sat on the edge of his cot, pretending to adjust his boots while stealing glances at Tiverine. The alien shifted slowly to the other cot, but instead of lying down on it, it lowered itself carefully to the floor beside it, folding its long limbs inward until it resembled some enormous insect curling into a protective shell. Daniel stared. "You don't use the bed?" Tiverine's mandibles twitched. "This form does not trust high places." Daniel gave a faint, nervous chuckle. "Fair enough." For a while, silence stretched between them. Daniel lay down, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe naturally. He felt every second drag like an hour. The sound of Tiverine's movements was soft, almost hesitant, as though the alien was just as nervous as he was. Then Daniel heard it. A faint, uneven rhythm, breathing. At first it was shallow, almost trembling, but slowly it grew steadier. The sound filled the quiet room like a heartbeat. Against his own will, Daniel felt his chest loosen. Something about that steady rhythm pulled him down, like the tide pulling a boat toward shore. He closed his eyes. For the first time in months, sleep came easily. When he woke, pale light filtered through the embassy windows. Daniel stretched, blinking the fog from his eyes. To his surprise, he felt rested, more rested than he had in weeks. He turned his head. Tavarin was still curled on the floor, but its posture was looser now. Its limbs relaxed. For the first time, Daniel noticed that the alien's chest rose and fell in slow, calm breaths. Tavarin stirred, its eyes opening slowly. When it saw Daniel awake, it tilted its head again, studying him. "You remained," it said softly. Daniel frowned. "Of course I did. Orders, right?" But Tavarin only gave a low, vibrating hum. It was not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh, but something in between, a sound of relief. Daniel sat up, running a hand through his messy hair. The night replayed in his head. The silence, the breathing, the strange calm that had crept into him. He realized something unexpected. He hadn't just helped Tavarin sleep. Tavarin had helped him, and though he would never admit it aloud, Daniel felt something shift inside him. A small thread of connection, fragile but real, had formed between soldier and alien. It was only the first night, but something told him it would not be the last. The second evening felt heavier than the first. Daniel walked the same hallway in the embassy, boots echoing on the polished floor. But now there was no surprise. He knew where he was going, and he knew what was waiting for him behind that quiet door. The knowledge made his stomach twist in ways he couldn't name. He had spent the day trying not to think about it, but the truth pressed against him all the same. He was not just a soldier anymore. He was someone's comfort, someone not even human. When he entered the chamber, he saw Tavarin already waiting. The alien's posture was stiff, its long limbs folded close. The pale blue lamps painted shadows across the ridges of its chitin. It looked both powerful and fragile at the same time. "You came back," Tavarin said. Its voice was low, almost hesitant. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Of course. That's the assignment." The alien tilted its head slightly. "Some do not honor such duties when they feel shame." Daniel paused at that. Shame. The word echoed in his chest. Was that how the alien saw this? As something shameful? He wanted to argue, to tell Tavarin it wasn't shameful to need someone, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he only nodded and set his pack down. Tonight, the air felt different. He could sense it the moment he lay on the cot. The silence was thicker, pressing against his ears. He closed his eyes, trying to relax, but his mind wouldn't quiet. Every sound seemed louder. The hum of the air unit, the faint crackle of the lamps, even the soft shifting of the alien across the room. Then he heard it again. Breathing. Uneven, shaky, like someone standing on the edge of a cliff. Tavarin was struggling. Daniel turned his head and saw the alien's body trembling slightly, its limbs tight around itself. The black eyes were half closed, but not in rest. "They were full of unease. You okay?" Daniel asked softly. The alien didn't answer at first. Then it whispered, "It is difficult. The silence is too wide. In the hive there was always sound. Warmth. Thousands of hearts." Daniel sat up slowly, watching the alien curl tighter. "And here, you only hear yourself." Tavarin gave a faint click, which Daniel had learned meant agreement. Alone the mind wanders. It begins to believe it has been abandoned. That is when fear comes. Daniel's throat tightened. He had never thought of sleep as dangerous, but hearing it this way, it made a painful kind of sense. He remembered nights in the field when the silence felt endless, when he was the only one left awake and every shadow felt like a ghost. He remembered wishing someone would just sit beside him, breathe beside him. Slowly, Daniel swung his legs over the side of his cot. "What if I sit closer?" he asked. Tavarin looked up, startled. Its mandibles twitched uncertainly. "Closer?" Daniel shrugged. "Might help. You won't feel so far away." The alien hesitated. Then almost shyly it nodded. Daniel moved his cot a little, dragging it across the floor until it stood just a few feet from where Tavarin had curled. The alien's large eyes followed the motion carefully, its body tense. When Daniel lay back down, he could hear Tavarin's breathing more clearly, almost in rhythm with his own. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was different now, less empty, more shared. Then Tavarin's voice broke through, soft and uncertain. "Why do humans not fear being alone in sleep?" Daniel thought about it. The question was simple but heavy. He stared at the ceiling, searching for an answer. "Maybe," he said slowly, "because we dream." Dreams keep us company. Even when no one is there, our minds create someone or something. A memory, a place, a face. We're not really alone, not completely. Taverin tilted its head, the black eyes catching the dim light. Dreams. It repeated the word as though tasting it. Do you see them now? Daniel gave a faint smile. Not yet, but I will when I fall asleep. There was a silence. Then, to Daniel's surprise, Taverin let out a low hum. The sound vibrated softly, like distant thunder rolling through the earth. What's that? Daniel asked. The alien paused, then answered. A sound of comfort. When the hive was full, thousands hummed together. It was safety. Daniel closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. It was strange, alien, but it carried a weight that eased something deep inside him. It reminded him of voices singing in a church when he was a boy, or the steady rumble of tanks moving together in the field. Not beautiful exactly, but grounding. Minutes passed, then an hour. Daniel's breathing grew heavier, slower, and next to him, Taverin's trembling stilled. The alien's limbs loosened, unfolding slightly as if the fear was lifting. For the first time, Taverin's body sagged in true rest. The black eyes closed fully, and the hum softened into a rhythm like a lullaby. Daniel smiled faintly in the dark. He had done it. Without even meaning to, he had given the alien the safety it needed. And strangely, the alien had given him something back. The sound, the presence, the knowledge that someone else was sharing the silence. It calmed him in ways he had not felt in months. Before sleep took him, Daniel whispered into the quiet, "You're not alone." Not tonight, he didn't know if Taverin heard, but when morning came, both woke rested. For the first time, the alien did not look exhausted. When their eyes met across the room, there was no awkwardness, no shame, only a quiet understanding. And though Daniel would never admit it aloud, he realized something that made his chest tighten. The assignment wasn't just a duty anymore. It was becoming something more, something human, something fragile, something that mattered. The nights passed, one after another, and with each evening, Daniel found it easier to step into the alien's chamber. At first, he had counted the minutes until morning, forcing himself to endure the silence. But now there was something different about those hours. They no longer felt like a burden. They felt like a strange ritual, quiet, heavy, but comforting in its own way. Every night, Taverin waited for him. The alien's posture was always stiff when Daniel first entered, but it relaxed once the soldier laid down. Slowly, the two settled into a rhythm. Daniel would listen to the hum of Taverin's breathing, and in return, the alien listened to his one night. After a long stretch of silence, Taverin broke the pattern. Why do humans not fear the dark? Daniel opened his eyes, staring at the faint glow of the ceiling lamps. Some of us do, he said softly. Kids, mostly. But we grow out of it. We learn the dark can't hurt us, the alien shifted slightly. And yet your kind still sleeps alone. Daniel thought about that. He could almost hear the confusion in Taverin's voice, as if the idea itself was unnatural. I guess we're used to it. We like privacy. A room of our own. A bed to ourselves. It makes us feel independent. The alien gave a faint click, the sound of disapproval. Independence is an illusion. No being survives without the presence of others. Daniel gave a half smile. Maybe you're right. But sometimes we pretend we don't need anyone. Makes us feel stronger. Taverin lowered its head. Or more lonely. The words cut deeper than Daniel expected. He lay in silence for a long moment, his throat tight. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. He remembered nights in empty barracks when his unit had scattered after deployment. He remembered lying in bed staring at the ceiling, pretending he didn't care about the emptiness pressing in. Yeah, Daniel whispered at last. More lonely. That was the first time their conversation carried weight. After that, it became easier to talk. Some nights, Taverin asked endless questions about human life. Why do you eat with small tools instead of your hands? Why do humans make music when silence is easier? Why do you smile when you are in pain? Daniel did his best to answer, though sometimes the questions left him stumbling. Other nights, Daniel asked in return, what does your home look like? Do you dream when you sleep? What was it like to grow up in a hive? Taverin's answers painted pictures Daniel had never imagined. Great caverns filled with glowing crystals where the hive sang together in low vibrations that made the walls tremble. Long tunnels where children clung to their elders in endless warmth. Nights where no one ever slept alone, where fear was drowned in the sound of thousands of hearts. Daniel tried to imagine it, but he couldn't. For him, the idea of constant closeness felt overwhelming. But for Tavarin, the absence of it was unbearable. One evening, when Daniel entered the chamber, he noticed something different. On the floor near Tavarin's resting place lay a small object. It looked like a carved stone, its surface etched with strange swirling marks. "What's that?" Daniel asked, pointing. Tavarin lowered its gaze. "A memory stone. From my brood sister. She placed it in my hands before I left. It carries her scent, her touch. It reminds me of home." Daniel crouched beside it, running his fingers gently over the rough surface. It felt cold, lifeless, yet he could sense its meaning. "Do you want me to put it closer to you?" Tavarin tilted its head. "No, I place it there so I may see it, but also not touch it. Touch makes the longing stronger." Daniel understood in an instant. It was like holding a photograph of someone you loved. You wanted it close, but too close would hurt. That night, when they lay down, Daniel found himself staring at the stone too. It made him think of his own family, a mother he hadn't called in weeks, a younger brother who used to share his bed when storms rattled their childhood home. He wondered if they missed him the way Tavarin missed its hive. Another night, the alien surprised him. "You make a sound when you're about to sleep," Tavarin said softly. Daniel blinked. "A sound?" "Yes, a small sigh low in your throat. It means you are surrendering." Daniel laughed quietly. "Never thought about it that way. Humans sigh a lot. Sometimes it means we're tired, sometimes sad, sometimes relieved." Tavarin hummed in thought. Perhaps it is not so different from the hive's hum. A sound to release weight from the mind. The alien's voice softened. "I have begun to wait for it. Your sigh tells me it is safe to close my eyes." Daniel froze. The words carried more weight than any soldier's oath. He swallowed hard, unsure what to say. All he could manage was a whisper. "I'm glad it helps." The bond grew quietly, night by night. Daniel no longer dragged his feet on the way to the chamber. Instead, he felt a strange pull, like the room itself was calling to him. And Tavarin no longer curled in tight fear when he entered. Instead, the alien's limbs loosened, its breathing steadier, as if it had already begun to rest the moment Daniel stepped through the door. They were two beings from different worlds. Yet in the silence of those nights, their needs were the same. To not be alone. To know someone was near. To believe that safety was more than an illusion. One morning, after another long night of shared quiet, Tavarin spoke as Daniel gathered his things. "You are unlike the others," it said slowly. Daniel paused. "Others?" "The humans I meet in the council. They speak with voices full of pride or fear or hunger for gain. You speak with silence. You give breath. You give rest. I did not know humans could do this." Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. He wanted to brush it off, call it part of the job, but something deep inside told him this was more. He had given Tavarin something real, and in return, the alien had given him something he hadn't realized he needed. Purpose without war. As Daniel stepped out into the corridor, he realized something that startled him. The assignment had begun as duty, but slowly, quietly, it was becoming a friendship. A fragile one, but real. And deep down, Daniel knew that friendships like this could change more than just two lives. They could change the fate of worlds. The first weeks had been quiet, almost peaceful. Each night, Daniel and Tavarin shared the same silence, the same breath, the same rhythm of sleep. But peace never lasted long, at least not on Earth. It began with voices. At first faint, like echoes outside the embassy gates. But soon they grew louder, angrier, until the words were sharp enough to pierce the walls. "Aliens out! Parasites! Human jobs for humans!" Daniel stood near the window one evening, his jaw tight as he looked down at the crowd gathering below. Dozens of people had come with signs, their faces twisted in anger. Some shouted into megaphones. Others threw bottles at the gates. Their chants rose into the air like poison. Behind him, Tavarin stood frozen in the center of the room. The alien's claws trembled faintly and its chest rose and fell too quickly. "They do not want me here," Tavarin whispered. Daniel turned. "They don't speak for everyone," but the alien shook its head, the ridges of its chitin catching the pale light. "They are many. Their voices are sharp. They cut through walls. They cut through flesh." Daniel clenched his fists. He wanted to argue, but the words would not come. Because Tiverin was right. Many humans did hate them. Many feared what they did not understand. That night the chamber felt different. Heavy. When Daniel lay down on his cot, the alien did not curl into its usual resting shape. Instead, it sat upright, limbs folded tight around its body, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Hours passed. Daniel shifted on his bed, the silence pressing on his ears. Finally, he whispered, "You're not sleeping." Tiverin did not look at him. "Sleep does not come when the world calls for my end." Daniel sat up, leaning forward. "You're safe here. They can't touch you inside these walls." The alien gave a low, broken hum. "Safety is an illusion. My kind taught this. Even in the hive, dangers came. Fire, flood, predators. But in the hive, we faced them together. Here, I am alone." The words pierced Daniel's chest. He remembered battles where his unit had been split. Men scattered in the night. He remembered the terror of being the only one awake, watching the shadows move. He remembered feeling exactly like this. Abandoned. "You're not alone," Daniel said firmly. Tiverin turned then, its black eyes glistening with something that might have been sorrow. "Why do you stay, human? You could request another post." "You are not bound to my weakness." Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of the long nights on deployment when he had prayed for another soldier's breath beside him. He thought of his brother back home, sneaking into his bed when storms rattled the windows. He thought of all the nights he had wished someone was there and how no one had been. "I stay," he whispered, "because I know what it's like to need someone, and not have anyone." The silence that followed was heavy, but different. Not sharp, not empty, just quiet. Daniel lay back down, his heart pounding. But the conflict did not end with words. 2 days later, Tiverin collapsed in the council chamber. The alien's speech faltered, its body trembling as it tried to answer questions. By the time Daniel reached its side, Tiverin was gasping, its limbs stiff with exhaustion. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines mocked the alien. "Diplomat can't even sleep without a babysitter." Protesters outside grew louder, waving signs that read, "Weakness has no place here." When Daniel entered the chamber that night, he found Tiverin curled tighter than ever, claws pressed against its face. The alien's body shook with each breath. "I am broken," it rasped. "How can a people trust one who cannot even close his eyes alone? How can they respect one who collapses like a child?" Daniel stood frozen, the words clawing at his chest. He wanted to deny them, but the truth was plain. Humans did mock. Humans did see weakness where there was only difference. Slowly, Daniel crossed the room and knelt beside the alien. His hand hovered uncertainly before he finally placed it against Tiverin's shoulder. The Titan was cold, hard but alive beneath his palm. "You're not broken," Daniel said quietly. "You're just different. And different doesn't mean weak." Tiverin lowered its claws. Its wide eyes met his, shimmering in the low light. "But they will never understand," Daniel shook his head. "Maybe not all of them, but some will. And until then, I do." The alien let out a trembling hum, softer this time. Not relief, not yet, but something close. That night, Daniel did not lie on his cot. He pulled his blanket to the floor and sat beside Tiverin. At first, the alien flinched, its limbs tensing as if unsure. But when Daniel leaned back against the wall, breathing slowly, Tiverin finally unfolded, curling its body in a looser shape beside him. For hours, they sat together in silence. Daniel closed his eyes, focusing on the steady rise and fall of the alien's chest. And slowly, Tiverin's breathing steadied too. Before sleep took them, the alien whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Perhaps I am not as alone as I thought." Daniel opened his eyes and looked at the strange creature beside him. Its black gaze reflected his own face back at him, small and fragile but real. He whispered back, "You're not alone. Not anymore." For the first time since the protest began, Tiverin closed its eyes without fear. And for the first time, Daniel realized the truth. This assignment was no longer about duty. It was about trust. About proving to an alien, to humanity, and perhaps even to himself, that companionship was stronger than hatred. The conflict outside would not vanish overnight. The protests would not end with silence. But here, in this small chamber, two souls had found something powerful, and Daniel knew, deep in his heart, that this bond would be tested again. The days after the protest grew heavier. Inside the embassy, the air felt tight like a storm waiting to break. Daniel could feel it every time he looked at Taverin. The alien was quieter, its movements slower, its glow dimmer. It was as if the voices outside had crawled into the chamber and settled inside its chest. Daniel tried to act normal. He told small jokes. He shared old army stories. He even brought little pieces of Earth culture, music, books, small trinkets from markets. But Taverin only listened in silence, its eyes distant. The hum that once filled the nights had faded into something weak, almost broken. One evening, Daniel returned from a meeting to find the chamber empty. Panic struck his chest. Taverin was always there waiting. But now the room was bare, the cot untouched, the faint hum missing. He rushed through the halls, his boots echoing against the walls. Finally, he found Taverin in the courtyard, kneeling by a fountain. The alien's body was hunched, claws pressed against the stone rim. Its whole frame shook as if the weight of the world had crushed it. "Taverin," Daniel shouted, running to its side. The alien did not look up. Its voice was raw, trembling. "They are right. I am weak. I cannot lead. I cannot even sleep without someone to watch over me. How can my people trust me?"
"How can yours?"
Daniel's heart clenched. He crouched beside the alien, trying to meet its gaze, but Taverin kept its eyes low. "You're not weak," Daniel said firmly. "You're carrying something heavy, but that doesn't make you broken." Taverin shook its head, the glow in its chest flickering faintly. "In my hive, a leader must be unshakable. Fear is poison. Doubt spreads like rot. But here I am trembling, collapsing before your people. If my kin saw me now, they would cast me into the shadows." The alien's words cut deep. Daniel remembered the battlefield. How leaders who showed fear lost their men, how weakness could mean death. But he also remembered something else. The strongest soldiers were the ones who admitted fear yet still kept moving. "Listen to me," Daniel said, his voice low but steady. "Courage isn't about never being afraid. Courage is about feeling the fear and standing anyway. And that's what you've been doing every single day." Taverin finally lifted its gaze. Its black eyes shimmered with moisture. "But I'm tired, Daniel. So tired, the voices. They echo in my mind. I hear them even when they are gone. They tell me I do not belong. They tell me I will never belong." Daniel swallowed hard. He reached out, placing his hand against the alien's cold shoulder. "Then let me be the voice that drowns them out. You belong. Maybe not to them, maybe not to all of humanity, but to me. Right here you belong." The alien stared at him, its claws trembling against the stone. For a long moment neither moved. The fountain's trickling water was the only sound between them. Finally, Taverin whispered, "Why? Why do you stay? You could walk away. You could live without this burden." Daniel's jaw tightened. Memories flickered. His unit falling in the desert. His brother's laughter fading, nights where loneliness pressed like a blade against his chest. He thought of how many times he had wished someone would stay and how often no one did. "I stay," he said softly, "because I know what it feels like to need someone and be left behind. I won't do that to you." The alien's body shook harder, but this time not with despair. It was something else, something raw, breaking open. Slowly, Taverin leaned forward until its forehead pressed against Daniel's shoulder. Its cold chitin touched his skin, but Daniel didn't flinch. He wrapped an arm around the alien, holding it steady as it trembled. For the first time, Taverin let out a sound Daniel had never heard before, a deep, broken cry that echoed through the courtyard. It was the sound of a heart cracking open. That night the chamber was different. Daniel refused to sleep in his cot. Instead, he sat against the wall again, blanket over his shoulders, watching Taverin curl beside him. The alien's body was still tense, but not as tightly wound as before. Hours passed in silence. Then in the darkness, Taverin spoke, its voice soft and fragile. "Do you know what it means in my language when one creature stays beside another through the night?" Daniel shook his head. "No, what does it mean?" The alien turned its glowing eyes toward him. "It means bond. It means the other has become part of your circle, closer than blood, closer than kin. It means you can no longer walk alone even if you wish to." Daniel's chest tightened. The words hit him harder than any bullet ever had. He didn't answer right away because his throat felt heavy. Finally he managed, "Then I guess I'm part of your circle now." Taverin's breathing slowed. Its glow brightened faintly. And for the first time in days, the alien closed its eyes without trembling. Daniel stayed awake longer, watching the slow rise and fall of its chest. Outside, the protest still shouted. Hatred still echoed in the streets. But in this small chamber, something had shifted. The breaking point had come, but instead of shattering them apart, it had pulled them closer together. Daniel finally let himself drift into sleep, his shoulder still warm from where Tavarin had rested. And deep inside, he knew this bond was no longer just survival. It was becoming something far greater, something neither of them fully understood yet. The embassy grew quieter after that night. Daniel noticed it first in the way Tavarin walked. The alien still moved carefully, but the trembling in its limbs had softened. The glow in its chest, once dim, now carried a faint but steady light. Something inside it had begun to heal. But healing was not simple. Every day outside the walls, protests still echoed. Signs were raised, voices shouted, and news channels replayed the same debates over and over again. Should aliens be trusted? Should humans let them stay? Daniel hated watching it, but Tavarin refused to turn the screens off. "I must know the voices of your people," the alien said. Even if they cut deep, Daniel could only nod. He wanted to shield Tavarin from the cruelty, but he also knew the alien's words were true. Leaders had to face the storm, not hide from it. That evening, when the time came to rest, Daniel noticed how Tavarin lingered near him longer than before. The alien had once kept its distance, curling at the far end of the room. Now it lowered itself closer, as though testing the space between them. Daniel didn't move. He simply lay down on the floor, spreading his blanket. The cot stood empty, untouched. He had decided the cot felt wrong now. Too far, too separate. When the room grew silent, Tavarin finally whispered, "I am learning something strange, Daniel. Something I did not expect." Daniel turned his head, meeting the alien's glowing eyes in the dark. "What's that?" "That your breathing is more powerful than words," Tavarin said softly. "When I hear it, the noise of the protests fades. My chest grows lighter. I do not dream of shame, I simply rest." Daniel smiled faintly in the dark. "Guess that makes me useful after all." Tavarin tilted its head. "No, it makes you necessary." The nights after that grew deeper, richer in silence and trust. Sometimes they spoke quietly about their worlds. Daniel told stories of human childhood, running in open fields, climbing trees, the laughter of siblings. Tavarin listened with fascination, clicking softly as if storing each detail like a precious jewel. In return, Tavarin shared pieces of its hive. How thousands of voices sang together before sleep. How warmth was carried from one body to another. How leaders never stood above their people but inside them, as part of the circle. "Alone," Tavarin admitted one night, "we are not complete. That is why this place has broken me so deeply. But now," it hesitated, the glow in its chest flickering warmly, "now I am beginning to feel complete again." "Because you are here." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He wasn't used to hearing words like that, not from comrades, not even from family. He swallowed hard and simply whispered, "I'll keep being here." But outside the chamber, rumors had begun to spread. Other staff noticed Daniel no longer used his cot. They noticed he left every meeting early, always to return to the diplomat's quarters. Some whispered it was inappropriate. Some said the alien had bewitched him. Daniel heard them, but he didn't care. What mattered was the steady rise and fall of breath beside him at night, and the calm that filled the room when Tavarin slept. One evening, a senior officer stopped Daniel in the hall. "Hayes, you're getting too close," the officer warned. "Your duty is to keep the alien stable, not to play caretaker." Daniel wanted to argue, but he only said, "With respect, sir, keeping it stable means more than standing guard. If I don't stay close, it doesn't sleep. If it doesn't sleep, it collapses. And if it collapses, the treaty collapses. Do you want that?" The officer had no answer. That night, Daniel returned to the chamber tired, his mind heavy. Tavarin noticed at once. "They doubt you," the alien said. It was not a question. Daniel sighed and leaned against the wall. "Yeah, they think I'm doing too much. They don't understand why I stay with you like this." The alien lowered its gaze, claws folding against its chest. "Perhaps they are right. Perhaps I'm a burden you should not carry." Daniel stepped closer, his voice firmer now. "Don't say that. You're not a burden. You're my responsibility, yes, but more than that. You're my friend." The word hung heavy in the air. Tavarin's eyes widened slightly as if tasting the word for the first time. "Friend," it repeated slowly. "Among my kind there is no word for this. There is hive, there is kin, there is bond. But there is no single being who chooses another without obligation. This is a human gift." Daniel sat down beside it, their shoulders almost touching. "Then let it be my gift to you. For a long time, neither spoke. They just sat listening to each other breathe. As days passed, the bond deepened. Daniel began to notice small changes. When he entered the room, Teverin's glow brightened instantly. When he laughed at a memory, the alien clicked softly in rhythm as if echoing his joy. And when nightmares woke him in the middle of the night, dreams of war, of fallen comrades, he found Teverin watching him quietly. "You shake in your sleep," it said once. "But you do not cry out. Why?" Daniel rubbed his face, embarrassed. "Old habits. Soldiers learn to suffer quietly." Teverin tilted its head. "But you should not suffer alone." "You tell me not to. Why should you?" Daniel gave a small, broken smile. "Guess I still need to learn from you." The alien reached out slowly, carefully, and touched its claw against his arm, gentle, almost hesitant. "Then we will learn together." That night something shifted. For the first time, Daniel lay not only beside Teverin, but close enough that their bodies almost touched. He felt the faint warmth from its chest glow, steady and calm. "Daniel," Teverin whispered as its eyes closed. "You are not just companion, you are hive." The word struck deep, heavy with meaning. Daniel closed his eyes, heart tight, and whispered back, "And your family." And in that moment, as both drifted into sleep, the protests, the rumors, the doubts, all of it seemed far away. What remained was something simple, powerful, and unbreakable. The understanding between two beings who had chosen not to let each other face the night alone. The day of the council meeting arrived. For weeks, rumors and protests had circled the embassy like restless wolves. The streets outside still echoed with anger, though smaller now, weaker. Inside, the great hall of the United Council waited, its long chamber filled with human officials, military officers, journalists, and representatives from other worlds who had traveled far to witness history. Daniel stood at the edge of the room, dressed in his plain uniform. He was not meant to be the center of attention. His orders were simple: stay out of sight, remain close enough if Teverin faltered, but otherwise let the alien speak for itself. Yet Daniel's chest throbbed with nerves. For weeks he had watched Teverin fight through loneliness, despair, and doubt. Tonight the entire galaxy would see if that fight had been worth it. The chamber fell silent as Teverin entered. The alien walked slowly but with purpose, its tall frame glistening under the light. The glow in its chest burned steady and strong, brighter than Daniel had ever seen. Whispers rose at first about the alien's strange form, its insect-like body, its many eyes. But when Teverin reached the central podium and stood tall, the whispers died. For a long moment, Teverin said nothing. It simply looked around, its black eyes scanning the faces. Then it began to speak, its voice low and clear, carrying the weight of every sleepless night it had survived. "My people," it said, "come from a hive where no one sleeps alone. To us solitude is death. It is the slow breaking of the mind. When I came here, I carried my hive's hopes. I was meant to build bridges, to speak peace. Yet here, surrounded by silence, I broke." The chamber stirred, unease rippling through the human crowd. Daniel clenched his fists, but Teverin raised its head higher. "Yes," it continued, "I fell. I trembled. I could not close my eyes without fear. Your people mocked me for it. They called me weak. And for a time, I believed them." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He remembered the nights when Teverin had whispered about shame, when its claws shook against cold stone. But then Teverin's voice grew stronger. "But one human stayed," it said. "One human chose not to turn away. He did not see weakness in my need. He saw truth. That all beings, human or Arathian, are not made to stand alone. We are made to belong to one another. He gave me what I had lost. Not orders, not duty, but presence. He became my hive." The words cut through the chamber like a blade. Daniel's eyes burned, though he kept them fixed on the floor. He hadn't expected Teverin to speak of him so openly. The alien's gaze swept the hall. "Some believe strength is silence or power or the absence of need. But I tell you this, strength is found in bonds, in the courage to admit we need each other. And humanity has shown me this gift. It is a gift more powerful than weapons, more lasting than treaties. It is companionship." The hall fell into silence, not the cold silence of doubt, but a heavy one filled with thought. Even the reporters leaned forward, pens still, unsure how to capture what they had just heard. Daniel looked up, and for the first time he saw respect in the faces around him. Not just for Teverin, but for what the alien represented. That night, when the chamber was empty and the speeches done, Daniel returned with Tavarin to the quiet quarters. The alien's shoulders no longer bent with shame. Instead, its body carried a calm strength. "You were brilliant," Daniel said softly, dropping onto the cot for the first time in weeks.